Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Conversations in Pop Culture, and we are back in the saddle once again for another season. And I do want to remind everybody that this episode is brought to you by my friend Preston Poulter. And if you go to pocketjackcomics.com and sign up for his email list, he'll happily send you 3 PDF copies of 3 of his comics so you can actually read them before you buy them. And Preston was so nice and gracious enough that everybody buys from my eBay store, Pop Anime Comics Collectibles, and you buy a comic book, whether it's a $5 book or a $500 book. Yes, I do have $500 books. And I have this bad boy. I control this book in hollow foil. So if you would like one, I could hook you up. First come, first serve. You can claim whatever number you want, 1 out of 15, or you could roll a dice. It's up to you. But anyway, you get one of these for free, as well as some other swag that people have given me. So if you want a free book, just order some comics from my store and I'll hook you up with a bunch of other free swag too. But enough about that, because I have with me Rob Multari, who has Nightwolf issue 8 out. Also, the other 7 are available. I want to make that crystal clear. The other 7 are available. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you again for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no. I'm always happy to have you on. Obviously, I enjoy what you do. You've been on a bunch of times. And obviously, there's a lot going on here. And so I figured before we get too deep into this, because there's always people who don't know who somebody is or what they do or what their project is. What is the basic premise of Nightwolf in like 2 minutes or less?
Right on. Yeah. So Nightwolf is a story about a young man who finds out that he's born a werewolf, gets thrown into a supernatural war against demons, witches, vampires, other werewolves. And, basically the story starts off. This kid, Rodney Marcelli, basically he has a full ride football scholarship to the college of his choosing and has a girlfriend and basically has everything, friends, but on the night of his 18th birthday, shit hits the fan. Supernatural creatures come out of the woodworks and just start, tearing apart a small town.
Yeah. So obviously, and then I'm gonna just slightly fill in the blank a little bit where he kind of gets sort of taken, protected, sort of goes through training, and they're bringing a fight to, I guess, the enemy now is kind of the short version of this whole story. The massively short version.
Yeah, the abridged version.
If you would like the rest of it, guys, you should go buy it, is all I'm going to say. But the reason why I want to do that and sort of shorten it up is that obviously issue 8, I feel, and issue 7 were a massive turning point in this. And so what is that like? Because at this point, it has become evident to these characters that they need to bring the fight to the enemy because they have been the hunted, and now they want to become, quote unquote, the hunters or the aggressors. And so what is that like? Because now I feel the book is shifting from being the prey to going to be the hunting and going to bring a fight to somebody. And that's a very different pace change and a shift. It's kind of like the second act in a Shakespeare play a little bit.
Yeah, so I mean, this time around, like they've been pushed out of their safe house, if you will, and they're like, it's time to take the fight to the Dark Covenant, and so they decide to move through the night into the morning, hoping to catch them off guard because creatures of the night, tend to be more dormant during the day. However, in issue 8, they actually end up running into an ambush. Can't really get too much into it, but there is a lot of action going on in this issue. This one is mostly a lot of fight with a little bit of story trickled in there. We still are also following, not only are we following Nightwolf and Snowpaw on their journey to fight the Dark Covenant, but we're also following Rodney's girlfriend, who had been captured by Lord Malice, who is the master vampire of the Dark Covenant, and his manipulations of her because he believes she is his reincarnated fiance who died many years ago during the Boston Massacre.
Yeah, so what is that like? Because obviously at this point too, and I think you just said it, and I'm just going to reiterate because it's going to lead to my question, is that there's been 7 issues of some fighting and some story, and now we are getting pretty much pure action, which is going to have consequences. I'm presuming. I didn't read it. I'm going to take an assumption, a presumption here, And I think it's a safe bet. If I'm wrong, I'll happily lose that position. And we all know the rules of how to spell assume here or assume. So, but I don't think I'm wrong. But what is that like? Because at some point, I feel in storytelling, you need to have a massive action scene to move something into its next phase.
Mhm.
And I think this is a problem with storytelling. And I understand comics are a unique blend, especially on the indies, where if you're doing it every 3 months, it's a little bit trickier. But what is that like? Because you've gotten to that point in Nightwolf at this point
Right.
where you need a massive conflict to end, quote unquote, the first arc.
Yeah. So this there's several conflicts that get tied up throughout these 12 issues, but the main conflict, if you will, does happen in issue 12, moving to a new story arc. So yes, issue 8 basically there is a conflict throughout this issue, and that it does shift the dynamic a little bit. At this point, at the end of the issue, without getting too much into it, there's a bit of a separation um, from the conflict, and then it opens up to several conflicts, if you will, throughout the next few issues, and then
Let's actually touch on that too, because this is really where good storytelling, I think, starts. Everybody's read Harry Potter, I think, for the most part. You know, book 6 and book 7 ended some conflicts and opened up 10 others. And then at the end of book 7, for the most part, I would say 8 of them were closed for the most part. But that's where really good storytelling occurs, is when you start ending part conflicts, but then they breed new conflicts.
Mhm.
And I love to go back to wrestling, where the best thing that can ever happen to a wrestler is that they have 3 months, they're feuding with somebody, and right at the end of the feud, another wrestler they're going to feud with next for 3 months costs them their championship with that person they were feuding with. And there you go. Or after they make a snide remark to them when they're being interviewed, and then that ignites something else, and it's a transition.
Right.
And so that's really where I feel good storytelling starts occurring. And I feel sometimes comics miss that, especially when you're doing 12, 18, 24, 36 issues, is you need to have those transition blocks in place. And so what is that like? And I know obviously issue 12 is going to have a major one of those, but even issue 8 has a transition block that kind of gets you to at issue 12. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, let's just say that, like I said, this kind of separation.
I
There,
mean, we don't have to talk about this directly, but even just as a writer and
right.
understanding that,
Yeah,
because
no, yeah,
that's a really interesting position and a very complicated thing going on, because I think there's a bunch of people who don't understand how to do that.
yeah.
I think it's a massive problem, not just in comics, but in media collectively.
Yeah. And I don't like to give everything up in the get, and that's why I've been building up for so many issues. And people were like, "Oh, when's this going to happen?" Or were we ever going to see this person again? Well, yes, you will, but I'm not going to give it up front. You know what I mean? I'm going to let you work for it. I like to kind of like sow different paths and then kind of intertwine things and then kind of separate again. I find it to be more interesting when you don't know exactly what's going to happen. I like plot twists. I like cliffhangers. Me as a fan, reading stuff like that's what I love. If I can't guess what's going to happen, then that makes me be, like, even more interested. You know what I mean? Like, so that's what I try to do in my writing.
This is interesting. I love knowing what's going to happen, and I just want to know how we get there. So I love stories that tell the end first.
So Tarantino.
So we know the end, but then we go to the beginning, and the end is a beautiful sunny day, and then the beginning's a sunny day, and then what happened in these 12 hours that got us to everybody being dead? And I love stories like that. I love understanding. So I've read
Well,
a bunch
give you a little taste of issue 13. You will get to see the end of like the second story arc right before the conflict. and then we'll take it back to like where it leaves off with issue 12. So that's something that you will get to see that time.
Because I really want to know how we got here. It is my favorite type of story. It's my favorite type of positioning, and then understanding it, and then I love being surprised how we got here.
So,
So
well, to paint a little picture for you for issue 13. So the opening is basically Nightwolf going to a supernatural like nightclub in like Los Angeles, but like his hair's super long. He's like, dressed in like a suit, and he's going in there, and then just wolfs out and starts going off on these supernatural nightclub attendees. That's when you Tarantino it back to what happens at the end of issue 12, and I'm not going to say any more of why that happens. We're just going to leave it there for you.
Fair enough. And then obviously, even going further into this, and obviously, I don't want to ruin too much of the story, but I do like to talk inside baseball. What I find interesting, and obviously, I don't know, Ed Davis does the Immoral Error, and he's got, I think, like 10 issues out now, 9, 10. I forget his number, but it's up there. And one of the things that I find interesting about him, and I'm curious how you feel, is that at a certain point, I would imagine people become disenfranchised with comics, with series, because once you get to 6 issues, I think there can sometimes be a problem where somebody says, I am 6 issues in, and do I want to go 7? Or you have drop off. And then you might have drop offs and you have pickups, but that's very complicated. You have to maintain interest. And it is very hard. And I don't know how many times you do Nightwolf a year. I don't know that off the top of my head. Is it 2 times or 3 times a year?
Nightwolf started out as 1 a year. Now it's 2 a year.
So you get where I'm going, where if you're doing it 6 months, then 6 months, it's very hard for me sometimes as a reader to be invested into somebody's series when it's not quarterly or it's not every other month. And
Right.
so what is that like? Because when you go 8, 9, 10 issues in, I mean, there's a certain point where I'll say, obviously you have a trade out for one of these. So that's helpful to some degree. But at a certain point, I mean, with Corey Hardiman's Sister Mercy, I said, look, I'm just going to wait for the omnibus to come out for the first 8 issues because I am too far behind and it's too expensive for me to get in.
Yeah.
And so what is that like? Because you lose interest or even generating interest or creating interest because you have people who are diehard invested fans.
Yeah.
And you also have people say, look, I've been read issues 1 through 4, and then I kind of just lost interest, or you launched at a weird time when there's 10 other projects and I had to pick and choose, and then you launched issue 5 also at a bad time for me. And so, because that's where I think this is getting complicated once you get up to those higher numbers.
Yeah, I think there is a bit of drop off, but I think for me, I've been very lucky to have a lot of diehard Wolfpack members come back because right now, majority of my backers are return backers, and a lot of them are getting the new issue. It's I think also the people who are jumping in, as you said, because it's 8 issues, it's kind of hard to there are catch-up tiers, but not everybody wants to get all the single issues. A lot of people want to get the trade, as you mentioned. I have volume 1 out, so I have a lot of people who have that who have been waiting for volume 2, knowing that issue 8 is the end of volume 2. So after the next Snowpaw issue, the volume 2 trade paperback campaign will then launch. So I think some people are hanging on for that as well. So kind of a balance.
Let's actually talk about that too, because this is where this gets really complicated about business, is that you now have what I dub an asset. So obviously, for those who don't know, an asset could be a stock. It could be, depending on how much money you have in your bank account, and if it's a high yield savings account, it could be a CD, or it could be an IP. And I would consider Nightwolf to be an asset versus I mean, obviously, there's a million jokes I can make technically on that. I'm refraining because I'm trying to be an adult here. There's so many things I could say. I'm purposely stopping myself. But the thing is that it can generate a lot of money, and obviously in multiple ways, where you have single issues, but then you have a trade, but that trade's 6 months out, and not because it's not already done, but because you have a schedule to maintain, and other
Right.
things have to come out. So what is that like? Because the business of Nightwolf can be extremely profitable, or it can be break even, and you're probably more in the black than the red. But
Mhm.
it's also when the money's coming in, and that's a very complicated thing, because on that trade you might do 8 to 10,000 too, or more, and all this. But that's 6 months away. But you
Right.
got to do this one, and so what is that like? Because that's where this gets super tricky with comics.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, I had been rotating between two books, Nightwolf and Snowpaw for the most part, with a few extras in between, just that I was testing out. But so I have issue 3 of Snowpaw is coming next. That should be probably first quarter of 24. It should have been this past. Actually, it should have probably launched before issue 8 of Nightwolf, but my artist Mog was working on another book and couldn't get started until October. So clearly, I couldn't launch a book for that. So
The nerve of her! How
I
dare
know,
she?
right? How
How
dare
dare
she
she?
find other work?
She should only be working on Snowfall, and that's it.
Well, she's on it now, and she's actually up through I believe she's the first quarter of the book done, and then I have to send off to the colorist. So that's definitely getting rolling, and we should be ready by February. I'm Marchish. I would hope around that time.
And you'll
But
be
yeah,
back here. Don't worry, you'll be back here. Let me
I'm
win.
sure. I'm sure. But yeah, so once that's done and on its way to being fulfilled, that's probably, again, because the trade's basically done at this point. I need to, once this is done funding, then Carlos, my illustrator, will start working on like the new cover art for the trades, and also because each trade I do is one of the hardcovers with the die cut. He's got to do the second werewolf underneath, the connecting battle scene here. So he has work to do. Plus, we'll have 16 additional story pages that he's going to be working on. So it's going to be like having an extra issue in the book.
Yeah, let's actually talk about that too, because this is a very complicated debate. It's not. It's a complicated but fun debate, meaning that it's nobody's killing each other over this debate in comics, at least not yet. But when to launch a trade, when not to launch a trade,
Mhm.
how soon you should launch a trade, because this is where it gets tricky. And there's been plenty of people who have had success launching a trade 3 years out. Somebody's launched a trade 2 months after their final issue came out. And then people have had very mixed results with all of those things. You have launched 6 months after. And so, what is that like? Because I do think that if you finished issue 8 of Nightwolf and then in January or February you launched the trade, I would kind of be like, bro, like, what the hell? Right? Because to me, yeah, sure, it's cool to have a nice collected edition, but it just came out.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's no like, I kind of feel gypped a little bit.
Well, for me, like I want to be able to I'll have issue 8 in hand, and I'll be like, I don't want to kill the sales for that either afterwards. Like, I still need my after campaign sales to keep me going. So it's not something that I just want to kill the buzz for that right away.
Do you feel that it's complicated, because there are people who are waiting for the trade. There are people who only buy trades, right?
Right.
And which that, I'll be very honest, at a certain point, I said, look, I would rather just pick up your trade because, I want to put something on a bookshelf, right?
Right.
So I'm a bookshelf collector with certain materials. Certain books I'm fine reading in digital. And I'm like, I read issue 1 in digital, kind of sucks. No, thank you. I'm howdy. Not your work. I enjoyed the first issue of Nightwolf. I enjoyed the first arc of Nightwolf in a lot of ways. I haven't read Snowpaw yet, which is not good. But anyway,
caught up before I come back.
I might have to. But I digress. But there are people who say, look, I just want a book on my bookshelf, and I'm not interested in a bunch of floppies.
Yeah.
These are a pain in the ass. But it gets complicated, because let's say that you could do $4,000 extra with issue 8, with all the variants and all that stuff. And then you release a trade and that cuts down to 2,000, but then the trade sells another 1,500 after you funded the Kickstarter. It's trying to find that balance. And also, don't you want people to somewhat forget a little bit about issue 8 and Nightwolf? So that when you bring out a trade again, it's like, oh, new product. What's this? Oh, it's issues 5, 6, 7, and 8. Oh, I haven't seen this in 6 months. Cool. I want to buy it. Because honestly, this is why I have the rule on my show. It's usually 10 to 12 weeks between guests. Because if we're on this week and next week, you're now a regular. And you don't become an event. And I mean, maybe my thinking is outdated. I have no problem admitting that my thinking might be a little wonky on that. But to me, it should be an event.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, everything, whenever you launch a new product, it should always be an event. And then whenever you launch it on something else, you should constantly make it an event. It should be exciting. And I would say that, like, when it comes to my Wolfpack, I would say majority are single issue readers. And then I have, then the rest are like, the trade people. And then I have like that weird, like, crossover where people will buy both. The people who are really like into the story and really collectors will come back and grab the trade. But it also, to make it more worthwhile to everybody, that's why I add the additional story pages, to that way, make it like there is a new issue that's coming out. It's not just the rehashed 5 through 8. It's going to be 5 through 8 plus 4 additional story.
Let me ask this.
Chapter.
Let me ask this. I mean, when you do a trade, do you have a soft cover and a hard cover?
Yes.
Because this is where I think it's really interesting, right? Is that I love when campaigns do a limited edition 100 print run hardcover edition. Because now what you're doing, so Tom Hutchinson did this with Penny for Your Soul, where there was a limited, I think, 200 print run, but then the soft cover is unlimited. So one of the things for me is that I want that limited 100 or 200 print run copy. So I have a limited Critter book by him. And to me, that becomes a commodity. It becomes a rare book to hunt down, versus if you're printing 5,000 copies of the hardcover edition. I mean, because then that's where it starts becoming a collector's item.
Right.
And books can be collector items.
Yeah.
It becomes that. So, like, for me, I appreciate when campaigns do stuff like that and run limited hardcovers. And then once they're sold out, they're never going to reprint that hardcover.
The way I did with my volume 1, I did like the couple thousand for the soft cover, and then I did a 200 print run of the Virgin variant soft cover, and I believe the hardcover was printed at 500 copies.
No, because I feel you need something that makes it limited, because at this point, exclusivity is king. I mean, that's just what I think. Again, my thinking is sometimes odd. And I understand that it puts me at odds with everybody else in comics, and I'm more than happy to be at odds. You are all wrong. Hey, I was right about Netflix, and I was right about Bitcoin, and I was right about a lot of other things. People made fun of me for buying Apple stock too, and look where we're at, guys. Look at where we're at. So maybe you ought to listen to me when I tell you what stocks to buy and what not to buy, and we would all be a hell of a lot richer. But no. I got made fun of. Me and my cryptocurrencies are slaying, and we will continue to slay. But you can join and be a crypto bro just like me. And then you can sell your crypto when it's really high, and then buy more comics. It's simple, guys. It's simple. We have to prop up the industry of comics, and I don't see any other way how to do it. I'm an advocate. What can I say? But I digress. I like how you're just quiet. I just love how you're just quiet about like the notification right there. It's great.
I mean, I'm not so much into like stocks in general. My wife does that stuff. I pay. My stocks are in my collection.
Fair enough. But but I digress right there too. But I actually do want to dive further into baseball with you because you've also mixed up a bunch of stuff in this campaign, and I think that you brought in a cosplay cover for the first time,
I did.
and obviously cosplay is bigger than it's ever been.
Yeah,
It's in a weird space. It's in a very
yeah,
weird
it's
space right
growing. It's definitely a growing industry within the industry.
it's growing and it's also become though the gates have been torn down in many ways. Oddly enough, where it used to be that the top 50 cosplayers had a lot more power, and now they actually have a lot less power. Because for those who don't know, and the basic synopsis is that during COVID, all these people started doing closet cosplays. They'd pick something from their closet and they'd make a cosplay out of what they had. And then there's all this stuff, and they were putting cosplay pictures of themselves up on Instagram, and all of these people grow. And so it became a very different industry. And a lot of the top people were not at cons during COVID for 2.5 years, give or take. And then a lot of people grew and went from having 1,000 followers to having like 20,000. And it's created a very cool shift in the industry. And now it is more accessible and more, I guess, liberated
Well,
than
it's more common too. Before there it might have been like 10 years ago, it was very rare and but to see somebody. And now it's like, now more people are going to cons and you see them dressed up more and more and more.
And also, I would imagine that 10 years ago with an indie book, it was like, what are you doing here? Why would I want to be part of this? Even a cosplayer might even say, I don't get it. And which I want to be on a Marvel cover. And
Right.
now, all of a sudden, when a book is doing 10, 20, 30,000 on the indie front, it's kind of legit. And so what is that too? Because I hate to say this, if you were doing a grand on Nightwolf, I don't think it would be the same as you doing 8 campaigns of over $10,000.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, for sure.
And now there's some legitimacy there too. So what is that like? Because you do have a cosplay cover and you join that cult, for lack of a better word.
Well,
And
yeah, I mean, it kind of like, so the fact that I did have some kind of cred that I've built up with Kickstarter, a lot of my campaigns being in the 5 figures, 6 figures, almost. But like, it's a lot of it,
you had a 6-figure campaign, or
No,
is
no,
it
I have a speculation.
combined? You've done
Combined, yeah, no, combined, I'm way past 6 figures on my campaign totals. So basically, like I've had majority of my campaigns being 5 figure, and the fact that like that's given me enough credit on, and I'm all when I'm live, you see me all over the place, right? So a lot of people may or may not know me, but they know they know my logo, they know Nightwolf logo. So I teamed up with a cosplayer group who they do it's called Cosplay Cafe, and they do like streams, and they do a lot of stuff and they go to conventions, and they do a lot of stuff. And I approached them and I was like, hey, I want to do a cosplay contest, and I want the winner to be on my book. And so that was last February, and that the winner is Sarah Frades, who is on my book right now. So she was the winner, and she now is on the cover. So it just, the fact that like I wasn't somebody just starting out, if you have a contest, who's going to know that book, right, that brand. Whereas like I've been out and I've been established, myself, and been able to have enough people who are willing to dress up like my characters, and then come and take pictures of themselves and participate. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and do you feel that since you do have a cosplay cover now, that it opens up a possibility, it opens up an option? Because obviously people love cosplays in general. They love cosplay covers. They enjoy cosplay, and that somebody say, cool, this is just another option that wasn't there before. Because isn't that kind of, I mean, on the business front, I think it's providing another option. It's also legitimizing. It's also making a character come from the book into the real world to some degree.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's all of that, I would imagine. And it kind of provides, I just think, you know, I guess it blurs the lines might be a good way to put it without, putting it meanly. I don't know how to explain that concept, but to me, that's what it does is that it blurs the lines where it takes something that is from a comic book and brings it into the real world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean it does. It makes it feel more real. And that, the fact that people can find something out of their closet and dress, like, cause her clothes, it was easy for her, to get boots, get a dress, the character that she's playing is one of the witches in the books, Janelle, and she pulled it off to a T, and she embodied that character. Like she was perfect for the part. If it was a live action series or movie, I would cast her right now. So that like brings it that much more to like the legitimacy of like this could actually live in real life or in the screen.
And then do you also feel that it taps into her audience too? Because at this stage, and we were speaking a little bit off air, but Kickstarter has become a lot tougher in the last year or 2 years for a lot of reasons. I don't think you're going to mind me saying the reasons. Obviously, there's more campaigns out there. There is better product. There's also worse product. Also, people I feel are just exhausted right now. This time of the year is just brutal. Obviously, there's a lot of money being spent. I'm the first person to say that I am tightening up my budget. There is legitimately, I think, 3 paychecks left in the year for most people in America.
Right.
It's there's 26 paychecks for most people in America. There are 3 left until January 1st. And that is terrifying for certain people. I know exactly how much money that is. I just did the math in my head. Oh shit, that's kind of scary. How much money actually is coming into my bank account. But anyway, all jokes aside, I would imagine that this does help to some degree because now you are tapping into somebody else's audience, and that is very efficient, especially when getting airtime, getting views, getting social media, being everywhere, getting somebody to click, and having that extra layer of cool. I'm a fan of this cosplayer. I'm going to go buy her book. I don't really care so much about Nightwolf, but I want to support my friend or I want to support this cosplayer, and this is a good way how to do it. No offense.
Yeah, no. I mean, there is some legitimacy to that. There, even like with cover artists in general.
We're going to talk about that too.
Yeah,
promise. We're going to talk about Jamie. It's all right.
I just, in general, there is when you have a cover, cosplay being a new audience, any new artist you bring in, there's that kind of a crossover with their audience coming just because they want that cover. Because they're supporting their artist or their cosplayer. And then there's the chance, okay, well, they'll stick around for the next time. So yeah, there's kind of like, that's a good way of bringing in new audience members to help continue to push the book forward.
Yeah, and then since you mentioned it, we might as well, and I'm obviously joking about Jamie Tyndall, but you brought in Jamie Tyndall. I think this is your first time you hired Jamie Tyndall as a cover artist. And obviously, Jamie Tyndall is well known by a lot of people for a lot of reasons. I think Jamie Tyndall's done some animation work. I think he's done some other things outside of comics that people know him for. He's obviously done a lot of work for Zenescope. He's done some stuff. I think he's done some stuff for Marvel. I could be mistaken, but I know he's done stuff for like White Widow. I know that obviously Merc Mag, Comics Elite. And so what is that like? Because Jamie Tyndall has a huge audience and people love Jamie Tyndall work. People really thoroughly like what Jamie does. And Jamie has a loyal fan base. And obviously Jamie Tyndall, took a break from Kickstarters and doing covers, and now he's kind of back doing them. And so what is that like for you? Because that's kind of saying, hey, I got a Jamie Tyndall cover here. And if you're a fan of Jamie's work, you need to back this cover. Whether you open the book or not, you still need to back it if you're a completist.
I mean, that's the hope, right? Especially when you have somebody of that caliber, but he does have a very stylistic style that everybody recognizes. So like in having him come and work in your universe, is definitely a great thing to have. Plus, again, also brings another bit of legitimacy to you as well. Because I always try to bring in, like I have my usuals, and then I always try and bring in new artists, but then I always want to try and reach out and try and get the next get in there, try and get somebody, because I'm always trying to raise myself up the indie ladder.
Let's actually talk about that, because I view this in a very different way, and this is where this is going to get controversial. I believe you either earn influence or you buy influence. I don't think that there's anything in the middle. I think you can earn influence and earn media, or you buy it, or buy the views, or buy the clicks, or buy the legitimacy. Now, there's a lot always said you could buy it. So if you have a cover artist, so we'll use J. Scott Campbell, Jamie Tyndall is a good example. You put Jamie Tyndall on your book, your project instantly gets a different look at than if you didn't have him on your project. Whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, or it's average, it doesn't matter. The second you go out there and you put Jamie Tyndall, John Royal, you put J. Scott Campbell on your book, all of a sudden you put an Adam Hughes on your book, all of a sudden it is a very different conversation than anything else. And then once somebody starts looking at your campaign, they can decide. But if that's the first thing they see or they hear about it, oh, Rob Multari has a Jamie Tyndall thing, somebody's going to say, cool, I got to look at what this is.
Yeah.
And that to me is buying influence. It's buying media. It's buying an opportunity as a conversation starter. And I understand it's a very controversial way to look at it, but I also think that's what Kickstarter to some degree has become. And I think that obviously I don't think the Tyndall cover is a bad cover, and I don't think it's necessarily immoral. I just think that that's sometimes what has to be done to get somebody to stop. It's kind of like you go in the cereal aisle and the flashiest cereal catches your eye, and you're like, cool, what's this? And say, oh man, it's got 15 grains of sugar and it's got caffeine and it's made with cocaine. I think I'm going to put it back down. My Reese's Pieces is what we're going with instead. But like that's kind of what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's just it. Like when it comes to books, and you're out there, especially when you're up to issue 8, like I am, you have to keep putting your stuff in front of people, right? And sometimes it takes 100 people to come in and say, hey, I like this, but I haven't the eye candy isn't quite there. So then like, if you get a Jamie Tyndall, right, everybody, I would say not everybody, majority people know Jamie Tyndall, right? As you said, because of all of his cred. So once you get a flashy cover like that, the people recognize immediately that's him. So they say, oh, okay, now I'm going to pay attention. Oh yes, I wanted to check this book out before, but I kept forgetting about it. Now I'm like, okay, now I'm going to get this, so there's always that kind of a thing too, is like, if you keep getting different, books and different styles of covers, to then get people to look inside the book, then you're like, oh yeah, the inside of this book's great too. You know what I mean?
Did you also feel though that great Jamie Tyndall's on cover 8, he should not come back for cover 9? and hear me out on this, and I'm curious your thoughts on it. And the reason why I say it this way is that if then all of a sudden he comes back for cover 12, it becomes an event. It becomes that I don't like, and it's nothing against Jamie. It's nothing against any cover artist in particular. We're just using Jamie as the example. But when Jamie comes back, it becomes an event within an event. It becomes a special, and it makes it so that great Jamie Tyndall's on issues 1. He's only on one book. I view Night Wolf, the first arc is broken up into 3 parts. So he's in part 1, part 2, and part 3, and he's only in 3 of those books out of the 12. Because now I know that, cool, but what book is he going to be on?
Yeah.
And so to me, that creates a very interesting way how to market it too. Because if he was on every single book of yours, obviously tabling money aside for a few seconds, it would lose its flair. I guess it would lose its shine. I mean, that's how I look. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it would.
I mean, yeah, I probably, like, for me, like, I like to bring in new artists because I like to network. I like to see new styles done for my books. Like I said, I have my usuals, and that's usually because I know they sell well. I know they do great werewolves. That's one of my biggest things. That to be a regular with me, you have to be great at doing werewolves and everything. You know what I mean? That's why Carlos is my main artist. And then Chris Williams, he's another one who does an amazing job with women and werewolves. So, I usually keep them along in their, especially with Chris, he does amazing pencil art. That's like the detail of it is amazing. So I always have his covers available for purchase for the original, because I know my audience loves his work. But yeah, for like, artists like in Jamie's caliber, I like to try and bring in new artists to see their styles, just because one, I want to work with them, and two, I like their art, so I want to see my characters done in their style. You know what I mean? So like, I have a giant list of artists that I want to work with for covers, and if I could do it all at once, that'd be great. But I have so many.
This is why we're having this is interesting. Is that so? You just said if you could do it all at once, but that's where I think everybody gets really conflicted about business, right? I don't want it. I have a bucket list of 50 people. It would be horrible on an interview level, on a business level, for me to do all 50 in a year. It would be horrible. It would make no sense. And it would be, I'd be done as an interviewer. And I'd be like, great guys, I'm done. See ya. I did my bucket list. I'm off, and I'm going to go play video games now, everybody. And have a nice life. It'd be great. So we get to season, like 5, and then we'd be done. Oh, it'd be great. But anyway, I could move on with the next journey. I'm like, no, it would be bad, because clearly on a business level and on a media level, doing your top 50 bucket list and then you're done makes no sense. I mean, I want to do all 50 of those people, but I would like to do them over a 10-year period, because all of a sudden, if they're sprinkled incorrectly. And so this is where I think it's so interesting, because I think if you have a bucket list of 30 artists, I think doing it over 25, 30 issues of Nightwolf makes a lot more sense, because it makes each and every one special.
I limit my variants. I don't want to have too many per campaign, because one, it gets to be really hard to control and to deal with. But also I feel it's too much for my audience too if I do too many.
Do you also feel, sorry to interrupt, you also feel that I'll throw another name out there. I love Paul Green. I don't know if Paul Green's on your list, but I love Paul Green. I feel if you put Paul Green and Jamie Tyndall on the same campaign, you now have 2 powerhouse boxers going at it. And that's going to force a conflict with your audience, because don't you want one main eventer on your campaign, and then everybody else is a good player and is part of the team? But, I don't consider, Jamie Tyndall on this campaign as the main eventer. Marissa Pope is the second main event, if that makes any sense. And I'm not trying to diminish anybody, but if we ranked your covers, clearly cover A has a job, cover B has a job, cover C has a job. It's like a wrestling show.
Right.
Every match has a job, but you wouldn't say your championship match has the same job, or in this case, a cover has the same job as your cover A. And it's a weird thing, and it's not meaning to diminish any artist or anybody of that nature, but I think Jamie Tyndall and Marissa Pope have a very different job than Carlos has with cover A.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So again, with Carlos, being the book's main artist, he draws werewolves amazingly, and a lot of people like that. And I also want to, usually I try to make the book artist the standard A issue, and then I try to build it up from there. So his covers really affordable for pretty much everybody. But then when you have people who are like more of the collectors who want to get, or basically they're like, oh, I like this one better, I'm going to get that one instead. I try to tier them out like that based on where I think they would fit, right, as far as like for doing a limited print runs and make them, a little bit more exclusive, as you mentioned earlier.
No. I think it's very important, because I think that if you have 10 powerhouse artists on a book, I actually think it could work great, and it can make it skyrocket like crazy, but it can also create a very, very bad situation, because what happens if you have your audience then get fragmented and they're not being upsold and they're buying one cover? And great, you have your fans are segregated following artists. And I can mention 3 or 4 artists that it could very well happen. Sun Kumanaki could happen with Paul Green, Jamie Tyndall, and Mike DeBaffo. If you have those 4 artists on a book all at the same time, you could very well have a situation where you have your Jamie fans, and that's all they're interested in. You have your Sun fans, that's all they're interested in. You have Marissa Pope fans or Mike DeBaffo fans, that's all they're interested in. And then you have Paul Green. I think I mentioned Paul Green. You have your Paul Green fans, and that's all they're interested in. Guess what? You have 40 fans and 10, 10, 10, and 10. Yeah. And that now could fuck up your campaign severely. But if you have just one of those superstars on there, you're not going to mess up your campaign the same way. And I think this is where it gets very complicated. And I think this is the game of Kickstarter. And I don't think this is a comic problem. I think it's very much a strategy of understanding human nature and how people work. And I think this is where, and I'm really curious because I just see it. And I'm a money guy. I run a comic business, and I have to make these decisions all the time in my business of what I'm buying, what artists I'm buying, how I'm doing it. And I've won heavy and I've lost heavy. And so I'm very curious how you feel, because Kickstarter is similar, but it's also very different.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's definitely it's a numbers game for sure, and I definitely feel like you don't want to overstack too much. I mean, I know there's a lot of campaigns that do, for me too. Like I try to limit like my add-ons to like the more unique stuff, and then later on in backer kit, I'll do like all of the variant covers available that you can add on later. So that's kind of like an after sale bump, and plus backer kit's way easier to manage when it comes to the add-ons.
Fair enough. And let's actually even talk about that a little bit too, because obviously, that's the other thing too, is that what you did in your campaign is that you have milestones, and I think it's based on backers.
It's based on the percent fund and backer count.
Yeah, I think the milestone rewards are all digital. Am I not?
No. The percent ones, like the 25, 50, 70, and 100, those are digital, and then the backer count is physical.
Fair enough. I'm gonna start it then. So the thing is that I was actually gonna just focus on the digital side, because I think this is my criticism of everybody's digital stuff. I've read every single person's digital thing, guys. Like it's my biggest pet peeve on Kickstarter is at this stage between interviewing people and backing 100 campaigns, I have read everyone's digital book. It drives me crazy. I've read everyone's digital book. And I understand if you're a brand new backer, it is like the panacea when you get like 50 digital first issues. But I've read all of your issues, everybody. Like I'm just waiting for somebody to find a bunch of stuff that I haven't read yet, and whoever does that, I will happily back your campaign. But like, it drives me crazy. But all jokes aside, how do you keep that fresh? Because when you do have serious backers now on Kickstarter,
yeah,
and anybody who's backed over 200, campaigns has read 90% of all of those free digital books. And that to me is not a good way how to cross promote, because that's my thought on it. And correct me if I'm wrong, is that if I give you a first issue of my book and you give me a first issue of yours to use on my campaign, hopefully somebody reads it and like, oh, what's Nightwolf? This looks really cool. I haven't seen it before.
Right.
But at this stage, if you've given 50 people a digital copy of Nightwolf, chances are I've gotten it. So to me, there's an issue with that, with cross promoting. It's nice, and I appreciate free comics, even if I've read them already. But there also gets a point where I'm like, I've read enough of this, and I feel like the cross promotion element is dwindling out.
Yeah. So for the most part, like when I do like the early bird ones that are like beginning, those are like a lot more. Some may have already crossed or other, but I try to like keep them like people who are putting out newer books or who haven't done much. And then definitely for the ones that are like the milestone, like the 4 that they got for the percentage. Those are definitely like newer books that are that haven't been widely available. So I try to keep that, and I try to make sure that it's something that I haven't already used for the most part. Then that way,
I've read half of your milestone books.
Well, I mean, you interview everybody.
It's so half of the half, so a quarter, I actually picked up from people on digital. I'm like, oh, this is a cool book. Let me reach out to the person. So so for me, what it is that at a certain point, I'm like, man, I've read some weird shit. Like, but like that like I guess we're but I'll give you the win. I will surrender the point because maybe I'm a unique case.
Well,
But
again, you interview, and you know that this is your thing. Like not everybody out there is going to every talking to every creator on a live, interviewing. So so I would say that for the most part, yeah, there probably is some for some people, but for the most part, I don't know about that.
No. Because the point that I'm getting at is that at a certain point right now, and maybe your campaign is not the one, but guess what? If I go to somebody else's campaign in December, they're gonna have at least half of what you have.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And now I'm looking at this and I'm saying this is a problem. And it's not a problem that's a bad problem, meaning that any free digital comic is a bonus. And it's not costing anybody real money. I mean, it's costing them maybe what, $1 in a digital sale in reality of what they'll get, maybe $5. And the idea is exposure. But my whole thing is that at a certain point, I'm like, great, now let's fast forward after your campaign. I'm going to back in the next year, probably about 25 to 30. Right. I'm going to get half, if not 75% of the digital books that you have on your campaign in some format. And that to me is a failure of cross promotion because I'm already exposed now through your campaign to those books. And anytime I get them again, it loses its value. And so that's where I think it's a real problem because we talk about cross promotion. And I think something is broken in the chain. And I'm very curious what you think about that because, again, you try to use new books and you try to use things that haven't been readily available, but there's a bunch of people who don't. And I think it's a real problem because it doesn't benefit that creator the same way.
Yeah, no, I think like definitely to an extent, like if you rehash and you reuse something that's been around for a while, it definitely loses its value. Unless it's like you have a whole new audience coming in, but that's kind of here nor there, to an extent. But yeah, I think at some point, like digital rewards have to become something more than just digital books. What that is, it's hard to say because
I know exactly what it's going to be. I know exactly what it's going to be. It's going to be some NFTs, guys. Some NFTs. No. That's terrible. It's just I'm terrible today. Seriously though, somebody if they did a digital reward of an NFT, I think that'd be great. They could do it on Wax. Wax would be dope if somebody did it on Wax. It wouldn't even be that expensive, all things considering. But I digress. But I do agree that they need to be something more. I honestly think that for me, a digital reward doesn't excite me. I don't get excited by it. I get excited by physical rewards. I get excited by holding something. I mean, I don't know how you feel about Kickstarter.
Personally, I'm less excited about the digital rewards because honestly, I don't even download them half the time or ever. I'm here for the physical book for the most part.
Right. See, this is where I was going. And the reason why I was bringing this up is that so I read digital comics, right? I have Comixology. I read digital comics because I have an iPad. It looks beautiful on my iPad. And what I like is that I have access to thousands upon thousands of graphic novels, and I feel no pressure in reading something. So if I don't like a book, 10 pages in, I don't feel like I just wasted $25 at Barnes & Noble on a book. And I feel no pressure, and I tend to read more, and I tend to read good books and bad books. I'm like, oh, that was a shitty book. That was a great book. Like I read a book. I read The Black Dahlia. I don't know if you know that story about the woman who was cut in half in L.A.
Yeah.
Great book. Would have never picked it up in a bookstore, but since it was on Comixology and it cost me $5 and it was digital, I said, what the hell, right?
Give it a try. Yeah.
But I don't get excited the same way when I open up a package and I'm holding something in my hand and I'm seeing it. It's a very different experience. And then when you give me a trading card, or you give me a metal card, or you give me a button, or you give me a beer koozie, like all of a sudden, like I feel even more excited now. Or you give me, I don't know what other things have been granted to me, but like to me, that's what gets me excited, because I'm here for the physical thing. That's why I'm spending $30 for a book.
Right.
If I wanted to spend $5 for a book, I would buy it digital.
Yeah, I think, for the most part, it's, I also, when it comes to like, if I did a print, so like if one of the unlocked milestones for a physical print, they're going to like the digital backers will also get that as well. So that's something that like I do regularly, but then it's like, oh, well, and it's no sense doing that for like, one of the other just digital only rewards, you know what I mean? So I try to make that's why I keep going back to doing like, new issues, or try and get issues from other creators. But again, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, well, what can I do, but there's so much that goes into it. Like, trying to figure out like, how to, have each milestone set up and then have stretch goals on top of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and obviously, I don't think people realize. I mean, obviously, people run Kickstarters. I think they understand, but even still, I think people who run Kickstarters don't understand that this is very complicated.
Right.
Running anything is complicated. Running this live show is complicated.
Yeah, a lot of people don't get what goes into things, especially when they're not doing it themselves. They just see and they think, oh well, yeah, they're like I'm sure like whenever they see another post by us, they're like, oh, they're at it again.
I'm sure people say, oh my God, this guy's posting in this group again with my stuff. I'm sure people are saying, what the hell is this guy doing on Twitter? What the hell is this guy doing with his Instagram? What the hell is this reel about? I'm sure of it. Or I'm sure people are like, man, I'm subscribed to Andrew on YouTube, but man, he's putting out a lot of content. Like, what the fuck, this guy again? And I'm just gonna let everybody know a lot more content is coming in 2024. That's all I'm gonna say. In the first quarter of 2024, I'm expected to have 700 to 900 videos out.
Nice.
Yeah. It's not as complicated as people think, but it's still very complicated. For those who haven't done the math, that's 20 weeks of content. That's 20 weeks of content, 5 days a week. Multiple pieces of content every single day. It's a lot. It's a lot of content. I'm so excited. It's about 70% of it's done already too, which is ludicrous. It took me like 3 months to build that though.
I'm sure.
And my Mac is saying, I'm tapped out, Andrew. I'm tapped out. Enough.
It's time to get a terabyte drive or 2 terabyte.
My graphic card is shot, and we're not even a year old. My Mac is a year and a month old, guys, and it's saying we're done. I'll be very surprised if my Mac makes it to year 2. I'll be very surprised. My $3,000 Mac making it to year 2. Oh, it's just terrible. So if somebody would like to start me go get Andrew a new Mac in year 2 fund, I will happily accept that. But I completely agree with the fact that I don't think people have a full understanding, especially when it's done right, because you're running a $10,000 to $15,000, sometimes $20,000 campaign. If somebody's running a $3,000 campaign, it's a very different beast collectively. Where I think once, and correct me if I'm wrong, at any point, again, I am not the expert. It's just what I see. I see that if you're running a $3,000 to $4,000 campaign, it is very different than when you hit 10,000, 20,000, 30,000. Because once you hit those numbers, more money means more problems. It means because more backers means more problems. I mean, I know this because I went from selling $32,000 in sales to ending up around this year at 85,000. Without a doubt, I have had more problems in my business, not because I was doing anything wrong, but because I'm dealing with more people, and more people naturally, if you sell 100 items to people, if your problems are 5%, that's only 5 people. If you're selling 1,000 items to 1,000 people and you have a 5% issue, what is that, 50? My
Yeah.
math is correct.
Yeah.
So 50 is a lot more people than 5.
Well, right. But, and for me, like my growth issues, well, I guess growing pains, I guess what we'll call it, is that we, as I've gotten bigger, I've had to order, more copies of my book every time I've printed something. Like, so like issue 7, when I went to print, I had over 3,000 copies that, I took and I storage, so if I have 3,000 or more copies of a book per issue, like I used to be able to like, store these back here, but now I can't. So now I had to get a storage unit, and I had to get a temperature controlled inside storage unit, and that's not cheap. So that's a monthly cost. My mailing list, as it gets bigger, the cost for that goes up. It growing pains, so like the more, and shipping, the more people you're shipping to, and the more people outside of the United States, that's all that, plus then you have to get, that, for me, like I also, use backer kit. That's a fee every time you use that, from like, and the more money you raise on Kickstarter, the more they take out, and then the more you raise for them, the more they take out, you know what I mean? So it's like, for me, like it just, it comes with the business. It comes with doing it. It's the cost of business, but I'm not going to stop because, continued growth and continue doing it. The more I hustle, the more it works. Not much more I can say about it.
Yeah, no. I agree. I agree. Obviously, more issues come with other things, and obviously, I don't have. I mean, I store things down in my basement, and I have a nice finished basement, and obviously, in the environment I'm in, it works. And then when I eventually move, and if I'm in a studio wherever I'm at, it will be stored there, my merchandise, and it is efficient and it works. And I understand that my significant other probably is not going to be happy with me, but the trade off is that she'll get a nice diamond ring and she'll be quiet. See, she won't be happy with me. But then when I'm like, honey, we sold $10,000 and I got you this ring. Will you marry me? She's like, I don't like your comics, but this ring is really sparkly. It's an understanding. It's an understanding. When
Oh, believe me, I know my wife. I'm sure, like between 10:30 and 11, if we're not done, she'll probably come in here and be like.
But so that's what that is. So that's everything that I have with that. So it's a trade off. So I understand. But again, for those who don't know what 3,000 comic books looks like, if you look at a long box, it is 10 of those. It is what 3,000 comics looks like, give or take 1 or 2 long boxes, depending on how big the comic is. Because the long box holds what, 250 to 300 usually.
So yeah, roughly. But again, like you said, it depends. Like, so one of those boxes behind me comfortably holds almost 200 issues, but preferably for like shipping purposes and not ruining the book, so they should probably be like 140, 150. But so like you can, imagine like like several shelving units full of those things.
Yep. There's a reason why that there are companies that build custom long box shelves and cabinets. They're awesome. They're based out of Ukraine. So I was actually planning to order it, and unfortunately, I was about to drop 2,300, and because of graphite, and that it's graphite and wood, they're actually like shut down, and their businesses slowed down because of the war in Ukraine. And I was pissed because I have a dresser in my room and it's the exact same size as the dresser in my room. So it would have changed out, and then I still could put my Xbox on top. And It would have been great because it would have solved so many of my problems. In which that it would have been because it would have been it's 9 by 4. So it's 36 long boxes is the equivalent of this. And I don't have 36 long boxes worth of merch, which means that it would have covered expansion for probably the next 10 years. And I'm so freaking pissed because I have the money. The money is legitimately sitting in my bank account getting interest, and it solves my problem beyond efficiency. Beyond. It's the cheapest thing that I've ever seen, and it would save me a storage unit and everything in between. And I want them as a sponsor because I'm perfect for them as a sponsor.
I'm sure once they get back up and running, I can make a lot of money for them.
Because I'm going to use their product. That's why. Because it is perfect for somebody like me. But I digress. Obviously, we spoke about a lot of stuff. And we did touch upon this. But I'm curious, just to reiterate it, where you feel Kickstarter and the whole state of comics is going, and in particular the MCU, because you all know how I feel today about the MCU. I don't know if you saw that, but for those of you who don't know, apparently everybody on the internet is saying the MCU is broken. There's a lot wrong with it, and I took the very adult and professional and correct stance that there's nothing wrong with the MCU. We are at the end of a comic book movie cycle. So everything is just bad in comics. And it's not just Marvel. It's DC too. And it's not just the movies. It's the TV shows. The whole thing is just exhaustion from it. So I don't think there's anything wrong with the MCU. I just think we're done. I think it's just done. It's where I'm at. Where it's time for it to just die. Maybe take a nice walk into the water and keep going into the sunset, and it has a nice farewell. Maybe we give it a boat and we set the boat on fire and send it out to sea. I don't know. However you want to pick it. But I am curious, all jokes aside, about the MCU, unless you'd like to talk about the MCU, that where you think the state of comics is, because it's a very interesting position, and I have my thoughts on it, and we're going to learn all about that in the next probably 6 posts on Facebook. So if you're not watching me on Facebook, everybody, I'm getting a lot of fun.
In general, the state of comics, I still think that indies are a lot more interesting than the big two. I lost interest in them years ago, and they haven't been able to win me back. I've been reading more Kickstarter books, in the last 5 years, and, I enjoy them a lot more than most of the stuff in the direct market. There are a few things that I do get from my local, retailer, which, hopefully he stays in business, despite the closures of others. But I think, I think almost and this kind of goes with the MCU as well. I feel like there's a lot of rehash in even in comic books, the big two are constantly using the same characters over and over and over and over and over and over in different ways, but yet it's still the same, and you have different writers coming and going, right? I think letting in new blood with new titles, new stories, and putting them more in the limelight, I think would help save the industry in general. Whereas as far as Kickstarter life, I feel like right now there's a lot out there. There's a lot of new titles flooding, but they're people who either don't know what they're doing or haven't established an audience to help them along the way.
Do you also feel that because this is where I am at with Kickstarter? So I'm owed a lot of books from a lot of people. And I get that shit happens on Kickstarter, right? You said that Mog got busy with another project, and that's why Snowball was delayed. And not delayed as far as a Kickstarter, but you couldn't launch issue 3 or start working on it.
Right.
These things happen. So I understand that things happen, but I also understand that I paid for something 8 months ago. And after a while, I paid for something 8 months ago, and you're running a campaign, and I paid for something 8 months ago. It's out of my hands. And so, this is where I'm becoming disenfranchised with Kickstarter. And I'm not franchised greatly with Marvel or DC or the big two. I'm getting to the point though where I'm like saying, look, I'm backing out of Kickstarter too, because I can't wait 18 months for your fucking project anymore. I was supposed to have a project in October that's now coming in February, which means it's coming in March. It was funded over a year ago. I understood that was going to take a year, but we're talking, you have 12 months, had my money for 12 months. Now you want another 6 months with my money, and I don't have your product, and there's no accountability. Like, at a certain point, this is where I even get concerned about Kickstarter, is that this has, and I'm not the only one. I can't be the only one, because I feel the trust has been broken. And I've said this, and I forgot who I said it with, but I am not a client of Kickstarter. I am a client of you. I am a client of Pat Chan. I'm a client of whose show you're going to be on soon. I don't know if I can say, he wants me to say his name, but it's all right. But he knows who I'm talking about. He's probably watching. But I'm a client of him. I'm a client of Tom Hutchinson, but you're a client of Kickstarter.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that definitely is valid. And I think there are a lot of like ones that are like overdue and like long overdue. In a case that like I had, and you knew about this, with my issue 7, it had to be reprinted 3 times.
Yes, I was very upset about that. I wanted to storm the printer. You stopped me. You stopped me, but I was ready to go.
Yeah, no, but it did end up working itself out, and I did get the books out. So, and that happened right before I launched this campaign.
But that's different. So I'll give you a circumstance. I'm not going to mention names. Person funded a graphic novel, barely made it across their goal, was silent for a year and 6 months, 18 months. Then, excited about the graphic novel, comes out, says his artist stole the money, can't recover the money, doesn't have the money, is now saying, I'm going to break up this into single issues. So, meanwhile, everybody who got the graphic novel is going to get what is called a legacy book. Here is my question. This is where my trust becomes really disillusioned. And then there was a veteran who said, well, at least you're getting something. I said, wait a second, I'm getting something? What, are you fucking crazy? And so now the book hasn't been kickstarted. There's no indication when it will be kickstarted. The person did $25,000 and $21,000, is spending real money, has a mid-sized publisher, new indie publisher backing them, and I have beyond trust issues now. And everybody who I speak to is like, I didn't even know this story existed. And I'm like, really? And you are working for said person and they don't want to answer that question, and then you come across me and I'm like, so how, as somebody who backed that project, how do you, because this is a community problem now.
Yeah.
You can understand why I am becoming more and more hesitant, but times that by 12 projects I'm owed. 15 projects I'm owed.
That's just a terrible practice in my mind, is to go live without a full book. And I know people do it all the time. I make sure my book is done, ready to go to print before I go to Kickstarter, because I don't want to have that headache. That's a headache, you know.
I went live without a full book, but I was a podcast.
Well, but you know what I'm talking about here. We're talking about.
I couldn't help it. I'm sorry. I couldn't help the joke.
No, but really though, like if you think about it, like if you don't have like a track record and you're going with like barely anything done, how are you even promoting it if you don't have anything done?
I think if you're doing 24 pages, you need to have 12. I'm generous. I am beyond generous. If you show me 12 pages, fully covered, fully outlined, so you've got 12 pages, we also need to get the next 12 pages. We're looking for $3,000 to help print this and get the next 12 pages done. I understand. I understand completely. In which I am beyond generous. But if you have 6 pages done, like what the fuck? and like the guy had the first chapter done of a 5-page graphic novel. I get it. So you had something, but like for me, I feel the covenant has been broken. And not to go biblical, but I feel the covenant No. And that's just how I feel. So that's where I'm at. But I don't know. Did I get you in trouble?
No, it's my wife.
But that's how I feel, is that I feel the covenant has been broken. And then who does that hurt? That hurts you. It hurts other people in this sector, because now I'm hesitant to back people's books. And I am slowly calming down. And I mean, obviously it's November, December, and I'm very selective. And I really rarely back people I don't know. I rarely back people I don't know for good reasons. And even the people that I back that I know are still fucking late. So like, and then they're on my show, and it's like, I'm like, bro, where's your book? And we're not talking a month late. We're talking like 5 months late.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know how, because I'm not the only one. I'm just the one saying it.
I mean, I've seen other people griping about stuff, and I'm sure, honestly, I think I've backed so many that I don't even know how many are owed to me right now. But yeah, I'm sure there are, it does happen, and it's crap that it does, because it hurts the honest creators who are actually, doing this right. You know what I mean? And, there are a lot of them. I mean, I'm sure you can see, but I have like a stack over there that I need to open that's still in the packages.
I have a few of those myself. I mean, I'm owed a lot of stuff, and then I'm getting frustrated, and it makes me not want to back projects. And I hate to say it, but there's a lot of great stories I will probably not read. And I mean, the last Kickstarter that I'm probably backing this year is Zenoscope's trading card game, just because I know it's Zenoscope.
Yeah.
But even still, I'm anticipating that thing's going to be in June. They say March. I'm willing to put money in June.
Yeah.
I'm going to put real money in June, because I just know, I know it now. But my definition of late, if you said, hey, Andrew, my book's coming out in February, Nightwolf, I'm expecting it in April.
That's fair.
That is where I am at. If I get it before that, great. If I get it in May, okay, you're a month late. If I get it in July, you are late. You are super late. But that's just how I feel. But I digress. I mean, I'm beating a dead horse. But I can't do anything except put my money where my mouth is. So hopefully my mouth is not going where my money is, because that might be a good or bad thing. I don't know. Depending on
yeah, I was gonna say, it depends on what you're talking about.
It could be a very good thing. It also depends where you're at. I'm gonna let everybody think about that one for a few minutes, because if you're in certain places, your mouth definitely wants to go where your money is. But anyway, I digress. I don't want to keep you here all night, but I do want to talk about one more thing. I think it's very important. How do you feel about Paul Gomez?
Yeah, I'm gonna be talking with him tomorrow.
No. There's no. Oh, obviously that's a joke, everybody, because Rob's going to be on his show, and I figure I'd give Paul a shout out, because I'm coming on after you next week, and I have no idea what to expect, so I'm going to be taking notes tomorrow, because I haven't been interviewed in like a year. I have not been on anybody's show in like a year. Being interviewed. It's so weird. So I gotta get that funny bone working. But in all seriousness, though, I do want to give you a chance to promote yourself. So where could people bother you? Where could people disturb you? Where can people join the Wolf Pack? Where can people buy stuff? Where can people not buy stuff? Where can people decide that they want to become a werewolf hunter instead of a werewolf? All that fun stuff.
Right on. Yeah. So you can find me at Lone Wolf Comics on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, though I'm not really active there yet. Still trying to figure out that with my old self. And then you can go to lonewolfcomics.com. That's my main website. And then a quick link to the Kickstarter is lonewolfcomics.com/Nightwolf.
And then I'm just going to keep saying it. I'm going to just keep pushing it out that you have to support indie comics. And what that means is you have to back indie comics when they're on Kickstarter. You got to buy them. You got to buy a lot of them. You actually have to share out campaigns. You got to tell people about it. And then let's say that it is not for you, but somebody else has another project or another comic they've written. You should go buy that book instead, because that directly and indirectly supports them. Also, following people on social media is very helpful. Twitter matters, Facebook matters, or X as it's called, or all the cool kids are calling it X. Instagram's a big deal. TikTok as well matters. And, if you know somebody who's into this stuff, there you go. And also, you can back a project without pledging any money. So you could throw somebody $1 and it goes a long way. And it's very much gracious and it's very much appreciated. So that's everything that is very important. And then as far as I'm concerned, obviously I am Pop Anime Comics on Twitter, Pop Anime Comics on Instagram, Pop Anime Comics on Facebook, Pop Anime Comics on YouTube, Pop Anime Comics on TikTok. And right now I am dormant, but I can promise you that come January 1st / January 7th, not exactly sure when I'm coming back fully, because I am taking most of December off. But I can assure you that I am going to have a lot of content. A lot of content is coming, and I think people are going to be very pleasantly surprised at what is coming. And if you're not already looking at my YouTube channel, I recommend you do, because it's going to be a lot of fun, a lot of cool stuff. A lot of editing has occurred, and I'm very excited. 700 to 900 videos, give or take, is going to be in the first quarter released on a variety of platforms. So look out for it, guys, because I promise that you may or may not get smarter. I cannot guarantee you that, but I can guarantee you that you will be entertained in everything that I do. And if you're not, well, I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry. But that's all I got for everybody. So appreciate everybody checking this out, and I'm going to give Rob the final word.
Yeah. Hey, thank you again for having me. I appreciate it. For those of you out there, check out Nightwolf. If it's not your cup of tea, as Andrew said, share it out to a friend. It might be theirs. So again, thank you very much, and see you out there on Facebook or wherever.
I don't think I could have said that any better myself, everybody. And that is a